Hi guys, this is a video on forgotten languages. My aim with this video is to provide an easy access knowledge base for people interested in FL that I feel is lacking on the web, especially in video format. There's a plethora of information on the web relating to FL, but much of it is lacking in analysis and very outdated, I feel. Notably, Elder's Vault is the only other person to have done a video on FL, but it was more for entertainment value, and he has misrepresented a lot of information about FL, misrepresented his video, I feel. A la the fake interview with Andrel, which was not real, and a lot of it was misrepresented, as I said. So, this video will really just be about explaining the basics of FL, what is the site, why should you care, and some of the history surrounding it. Initially, I was going to do a more in-depth analysis. This is actually the third time I've tried recording this, but I had to scrap the other recordings. They were pushing about 2 hours. They were just too long. There's just so much information in each of the articles, it's impossible to condense it. Even though I was just doing a quick analysis of each of the articles, it was just taking too long. So instead, I'm going to do this video to introduce you to the basics of FL. Then I will upload individual videos for each of the blocks of articles I want to go more in depth on. Because of this, there may be some loose ends in this video, some things that may not entirely make sense, or some things I may leave out, but I will try to hit all the major points for you. I, however, do hope you find this video interesting and proceed to watching my analysis of these articles, as I do believe that is really the meat of FL and want to share my analysis of these articles with you. A little bit of information about me before we get into it. FL came across my radar about 2 years ago, almost exact, October 2017 it was, and the site has just captivated me, honestly. I probably spend 8 to 10 hours a week researching different aspects of the site, such as analyzing the articles, exploring connections made in the articles, and reading parallel content to a lot of the ideas on the site. Not to be conceited, but as far as I'm aware, I am probably the preemptive authority on public FL research on the web at this point. I think I've spent more time studying the site than anyone else on the web, but to be fair, I also don't interact with the community at large, much if at all, so it really wouldn't surprise me to find someone who has done much more than me, which hopefully this video will connect us if that is the case. So, what is Forgotten Languages? Forgotten Languages is a website with a lot of depth and a lot of very interesting topics that are also very hidden. It is set up like any blog with archives and labels for articles, and the articles will be the first thing that appears when you enter the site. Each of these articles are written in a language. On first glance, these will look like real-world languages like Chinese or Russian, but looking closer, you will see they are in fact not real languages in the sense of a traditional language and dialect. As most people can guess, they are indeed crafted languages, and specifically, they are a type of language called a conlang, which we know from many of the posts made over the web by Andrel on many different forums, Russian web forums. That's the main one, I believe. Um, there's some other Spanish one, I believe. But anyway, we will talk about Andrel in a second. Conlangs, constructed languages, are specifically known as languages to keep people out, so to speak. Instead of being for general communication purposes at large, they are languages designed to only be read and understood by a small group of people. Conlangs are different from slang in that they are fully constructed languages, much like Klingon or Elvish, I believe, which have full grammar rules and vocabulary. So they are fully comprehensive languages, which the ones on FL are. We can't read them, so we don't know how comprehensive, but if you study the structure of them, they are an actual language. And Andrel has pointed out, he shared a lot on the web about that. So to talk more about Andrel, the site is run by multiple people, the admin and oldest author being Andrel, but there are many, Dyrene and Elaine, I believe it's pronounced, who I have talked to among others. There are just many contributors though, they're adding more to the team all the time. Probably, I don't know, they've added 10, I want to say, since there are 10 different contributors I've seen since I've started researching. So there's a lot of them. They're generally open to questions and emails. Andrel is usually the one you want to email. He seemingly enjoys interacting with people exploring the site and is very knowledgeable. Please don't take that as an invitation to email bomb him. He usually enjoys a modicum of thought put into your questions, from what I can tell. but in general is very helpful in explaining things about the site. They do, however, ask you to keep these conversations one-on-one and don't like when you share the emails in videos and pictures. They don't like that. So in other videos, you often hear me paraphrasing what I have learned from the emails in regards to the article at hand, but will not be sharing the emails with you. If you have anything you would like to add, Angelo, you should comment on it. I also believe it's your turn to send me an email. Now, the articles, as I said, are really the bread and butter of the site. Many people across the web who have focused on FL approach it much like they approached Cicada 3301, the famous internet puzzle which was released on 4chan, I think it was. But it was very comprehensive, a lot of cryptography, a lot of hidden puzzles. So many people go about it trying to decipher the language, treating it much like Cicada. As a side note, there is some connection between Liber Primus, the last known clue of Cicada, and FL, which you should look into if you know about Cicada. It's something I think you'll find interesting. Either way, that not the point of this video. However, I believe that is mainly the difference between my approach and others in the community. For reasons we'll get into later, it does not make sense to approach the site from a cracking the code viewpoint, from trying to decipher the languages, reverse engineer them. We'll get into those points in another video. Specifically, I think we'll call it the second layer encryption video because there's a couple of articles about it. But it just does not make sense. So even though it's a valid path to understanding FL in its own right, I'm sure it just does not work for understanding the site in a traditional sense. Because of that, I tend to focus on the content of the site more. Almost all the articles are laid out with a cover photo, a couple paragraphs of writing, sources for the article, which are important, and then the author and tags. As I said, we do not have time to go in depth into the articles in this video, but if you want to explore the site while watching this and get a feel for what we will be discussing, you can search for the tag defense on the site and get an overview of what the articles containing English are like. The articles that we cannot understand still have lots of information, however. They contain lots of religious and astrology symbolism. The sources for the article are almost always in English, as well as foreign sources, not permitting. So you can get a good understanding of the content of the article anyways just by exploring the sources. There are lots of research journals that pop up. On the more religious ones, there are lots of philosophy, I want to say. So there's just quite a bit you can learn from the sources. I usually try to explore the sources on an article if it's not in English, just to kind of see what I believe they're talking about. So we won't focus on those articles we can't understand much, but not to say we can't fully get a grasp of what they're talking about. The symbolism in the articles is almost entirely original as far as I can tell, especially many of the complex religious symbols. They're not found anywhere else on the web. The religious symbolisms from many different sources as well. The majority is Judeo-Christian, but there's pagan and Eastern religious symbolism as well in many spots. To get into a bit of the history about the site, it's been around for about 10 to 11 years now, I believe, from its first appearance on the web under Andrew's personal blog, before moving to the current FL Blogger site in 2010. The first article was in 2008 on Andrew's personal blog. We just know it was there from the creation. I don't know what it was. There's no archive on the web of his personal blog, and it was taken down when the original FL site was created. So we can't know what it was. We do know there was a blog post in 2008, though. The first video appeared in 2012. The videos being, you could describe them as trippy, I guess, kind of. Lots of rotating pictures, Mandela-like pictures in the background imposed over very flowing music, I guess you could call it. We'll talk about the videos more later for sure. Definitely, probably also in the second layer encryption video. But yeah, we'll save it for then. Honestly, I don't want to make this video too long. The first article that really started exploring outside of the academic applications of linguistics and linguistic history appeared in 2011, I believe it was. So originally, before 2011, almost all the articles are talking about linguistics of older cultures. They're talking about how the languages have changed, what the historical impact of the language was, very academic content. And then in 2011, they started posting some of the more out there content, some of the Queltron, I believe, some of the stuff about Gazillions. That may have came later, but that was really when they first started getting outside of the academic sphere and started posting a lot more, like I said, about the more out there topics that we will be discussing, which is really what interests me. The linguistic academic portion of it is interesting in its own right, though. I don't spend as much time researching those, which I probably should because it's probably the more pertinent content, but it's interesting. You can look at them if you want, but there was definitely a very definitive switch there in the style of content. They still do post some of that old content, but not as much anymore. So there's lots of theories why I believe people have noticed it, but we'll get in more into that later. FL first really got noticed in more mainstream internet from an above top secret thread in 2013. The thread is over 200 pages long. It contains over 3,000 posts and features posts by both Andrew and Dyrene. While I do have some issues with the thread and its general consensus, lots of the research is very legacy FL information and important to understand for anyone looking to the site, I believe. And a lot of the recent posts are very informative and dense, especially from 2017 onward. I found it stopped being a very front page thread of above top secret. So there's a lot of good content. I would say check it out if you've never heard of FL. At least you'll find, like I said, a lot of that very legacy information. FL used to have a sister site called Caracy, I believe is how you pronounce it, which is where a lot of information came from originally. I think it was linked to the audio label that Andrew's under, the Forgotten Languages Records, which produces, it's on all the videos, and I think they copyright all the music under that. And that's what Caracy took care of, if I recall. There's also no archive of Caracy as far as I'm aware. So you'll hear a bit about it. It's hard to find information on it if you weren't there when it was around. It's one thing that's important, that's worth mentioning, I believe, is FL's connection to Ruben Sardan, which is something you will hear about undoubtedly. I mention it only because I believe it's the strongest argument against FL in my opinion. What it is there was a Spanish dig in Iruna Valleja where a man named Ruben Sardan apparently defrauded the archaeological dig and produced false evidence of a Proto-Basque language in the region, which is, as far as the lead archaeologist on the dig, Gil Izale, I want to say his name is, the reason the Proto-Basque is so important is because it would give Basque a cultural basis for secession from Spain. So, obviously they did not want that. That's a lot of the crux of the lead archaeologist's fight against this, because he maintains that there was no defrauding. It's going to court, but he maintains there was no defrauding, and this is corruption by the local government. So do what you want. I only mention it as a footnote because there's ample enough evidence with things like SOS Iruna, and enough evidence against Ruben being an integral part of the site that warrants little more than a footnote. I mention it though because I do like to give both sides, so I think that's important. That is something you will run into. So there's that. So I think that's about it for the video. Like I said, just a quick introduction to FL and a little bit about the site. I don't want to make it super comprehensive, just a short video to get you introduced to the site. I'm really excited for this though, and think what you'll be interested in is the other videos I will be posting, the article analysis videos. We'll start with Chantilly, undoubtedly. That will be my next video. I hope to have that done and uploaded very soon here. So, have a good day, guys.